This is my second shot at this one. I originally published a version of this, but it didn't come out the way I wanted it to, and I was grossly dissatisfied with it. So I'm going to give it another shot, and if this doesn't work, well, I just won't post it. I'm referring to a subject called, I suppose, crudely scientific racialism, in particular to the work of a Canadian university lecturer by the name of J. Philip Rushton at the University of Western Ontario. We're all familiar with the fellow's theories, where he posits the idea that humanity is actually made up of three big races: the Asians at one race, the Caucasians in another race, and black people, Africans, what have you, in another race. And he says that essentially white people are kind of in the middle between two extremes of things like intelligence, sexual restraint, aggression, social organization, social skills, etc., etc. And his criteria for that are as follows. He groups the three races in what he describes as a workable continuum on the following criteria: temperament, activity, aggressiveness, cautiousness, dominance, impulsivity, self-concept, sociability, maturation rate, gestation time, skeletal developments, motor development, I beg your pardon, dental development, age of first intercourse, age of first pregnancy, lifespan, social organization, marital stability, law-abidingness, mental health, administrative capacity, reproductive effort, two-egg twinning per 1,000 births, hormone levels, secondary sex characteristics, intercourse frequencies, permissive attitudes, sexually transmitted diseases, intelligence, IQ test scores, decision times, brain size, autopsy data, endocranial volume, external head measures, and cortical neurons in billions. Now, a lot of these things are scientific, i.e. cortical neurons in billions. I think one can actually count those things, and I think that you can actually get a pair of calipers and check somebody's skull size. Other things are not quite so easily quantified, such as activity, impulsivity, mental health, permissive attitudes, sexually transmitted diseases. Well, okay, these things are where I get a little bit thrown off, at least my sense of logic. As one might predict, or as one has already heard, black people apparently, according to Rushton, are higher in activity, higher in aggressiveness, lower in cautiousness, higher in dominance, higher in impulsivity, higher in self-concept, higher in sociability, earlier at age of first intercourse, earlier at age of first pregnancy, shorter in lifespan, etc. In other words, they're more likely to be criminals, they're more likely to be addicts, they're more likely to be violent, and less likely to show sexual restraint, etc., etc., etc. And Asians are at the other end of the continuum. One can't help but assume that when he's essentially saying that Asians are more civilized than white people, who in turn are more civilized than black people. Now, where this kind of falls down is he's taking an issue, race, which he says has only existed for the past 100,000 years, with humanity having existed for 200,000 years. The human race divided in two about 100,000 years ago, and one group became the black people, the other group became the white and Asian people, who then in turn broke off into their own two groups. Now, so far, so good. Now, let's say that, assuming one accepts this theory. Now, he then goes on to say that he believes that he makes these generalizations about the races based on a bunch of very seemingly reputable scientific studies, all having taken place in the late 20th century. 50 years, maybe closer to 40 if you ask me, years of research, to judge a phenomenon that's been around for 100,000 years. That doesn't make any sense at all. First of all, I wonder if one can actually say anything about the position of the attitudes of black people or white people or Asian people 2,000 years ago, permissive or not. Who had more sexually transmitted diseases 500-600 years ago? We don't know. How about 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 years ago? We are, after all, talking about 100,000 years. We don't know, and we can't, in the very nature of things, know. And I suppose that that Rushton and his apologists would say, well, how are we supposed to know? We only have the data that we have right now because that's when the studies were done. No studies were done 1,000 years ago. Well, that's entirely my point. He's saying essentially that black people are the way they are genetically based on behavioral studies that have nothing to do with genetics whatsoever, and probably have everything to do with being a member of society's underclass. Or traditionally being that way. The situation seems to be rectifying itself somewhat, but we're not sure whether or not that process is complete yet. I certainly don't think it is. In any case, one could say that that this comes about as a result of social conditioning or as social factors, i.e. slavery, what have you. And even he admits this. He says some of the actual attributes that I've put towards these races could easily be environmental. Well, that's nice, but in other words, he's saying that yes, some of them could be environmental, but some of them are genetic and actually observed phenomena. But again, the evidence doesn't. We have maybe that big a span of time and 1/20th of 1 millimeter's length of time that's actually been studied. We don't know. I would also actually say that he actually groups North American Indian Aboriginal people in with this group. Now, I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to be taken the wrong way, but everything that he sort of pins on African people of African origin is also true of the Aboriginal North American population, probably to an even more pronounced degree. But interestingly, he places them in the Asian group. He doesn't seem to deal with that issue, that there's a contradiction, one of many, inherent in his own work. So it's a sordid business to actually take these people on at their own game, or to accept their own information and sort of say, well, even by your own terms of reference, your theories don't work. And have a lot more to do with social constructs, or everything to do with social constructs. Even if he comes up with all these studies that were only taking place in periods when those social constructs had been in evidence for hundreds of years. People of African origin have been the underclass in Western society at least for 500 years, perhaps longer. And interestingly, if you go back 2,000 years, we do have some information on attitudes back then in the classical world, in the classical Mediterranean, the world of Greece and Rome. If you were to ask a Greek or a Roman who the barbarians are, who were likely to be, and if you did actually a study, who are more active, more aggressive, less cautious, more dominant, less law-abiding, less stable marriages, less administrative capacity, and more sexually transmitted diseases, well, the Roman or the Greek would tell you, oh, that's easy. That's a blonde-haired German or a red-haired Celt. We all know what those barbarians are like. So even on its own merits, the theory kind of falls down. In fact, it completely collapses, even if you accept the information that these people provide. And Rushton isn't the first one to have come up with things like this. Walter Darré, the Nazi racial theorist, Alfred Rosenberg. Pseudoscientific claptrap. Even if you accept the figures that they use, you're trying to draw a genetic conclusion based upon social behavior of the tiniest of samples, the world around you, when human beings have been around for 1/5 of a million years. So we simply cannot generalize like that. Even on their own terms, these racialist types, these pseudo-Darwinians, their theories fall down. Racism doesn't make sense even if you debate it, even if you play at its own game. It falls down. Thank you.